I think we have to remember that our strength of our profession doesn't just lie in our clinical expertise, but also in our unity. And I think that's literally the biggest downfall.
Before you graduate, everybody was asking you, where are you going? Where are you going? What are you going to do? Where are you going to practice? Where are you going to work? And it's funny because that sort of stops once you graduate and you get your first job, but it shouldn't, because this license that you get as a PT can take you anywhere. Maybe an extraordinary adventure. Maybe you want to be a travel PT. You can just do it. There's no rules. There's no rules. You just do it. Embark on extraordinary patient care adventures with Jackson Therapy Partners. This is perfect for PTs who want to leave their mark in great locations. Discover literally and figuratively where your skills can take you at jacksontherapy.com. Now, here's a question for clinic owners. Do you want to boost your clinic's revenue by $290 per patient every single quarter? Of course you would. Enhance patient outcomes, ease provider workload, and turbocharge your earnings with remote therapeutic monitoring. It's a thing, and Physiotech makes it easy to implement and track and get paid for providing great care. Find them online at physiotech.ca. That's physiotech.ca. Finally, revolutionize your practice with MW Therapies all-in-one outpatient PT EMR. Experience their seamless integration of patient portals, marketing automations, and billing at an unbelievable value. Take a test drive and kick the tires at mwtherapy.com. On the episode today, we see this in Facebook groups and on Twitter every once in a while. Should PTs unionize? And then there's pros and there's cons. And then there's our guest today who's experienced, this exact thing. She's been involved in a bunch of things, whistleblowing to name a few. So we'll dig deep with our guest Kim today and find out, what are the insides? What are the pros or cons of PTs starting a union? And maybe you should or shouldn't. You decide on the episode. So let's kick it off here on PT Pintcast. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, so you do a lot of things. You are a physical therapist.
I am.
I'm going to say things. You tell me if I'm right or not. You're a physical therapist. I'm right there, right?
Yes.
You're an author.
Yeah.
What'd you write?
I wrote a very short book called Don't Buy the Minivan. And it was a joke way back because I've been basically single my whole life. I've got 2 girls. And people would ask me, like, what's your number one advice? And my number one advice was literally, don't buy a minivan. Don't buy the minivan.
But all right, so that's a great hook. Why though? What's it mean?
Because it's just awkward. I'm 31, 32, and you're driving around this minivan, and people are assuming you've got this other car at home. But no matter where you go, then you're stuck with a minivan. So if you're single, you don't want your only car to be a minivan.
Yeah.
So I never owned a minivan. So I always had a small SUV, and it always worked for the three of us. So I'd always say, don't buy the minivan. But then as time went on, it wasn't literally just the minivan. It was like everything. It was like, well, you don't have to do that. And you don't have to do that because everyone's on the minivan. It's like the thing you had to do. Like, you're young and your kids are little and they got big stuff. You got to do this. Well, then it became like, people say, why are you doing it? I'm like, because I don't want to buy the minivan. I'm not doing what everyone else is doing. So that I was able to extrapolate that into many different areas.
So it sounds as if it's like, don't do the thing it's expected just because people do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. People say, like, I can't believe you did this. I was like, well, I wasn't buying the minivan, so it was.
I feel like it almost fits into a phrase that's universally applied, like jump the shark.
Yes.
It's like something, and then you can apply it like, well, that's jump the shark. It's like, well, don't buy don't buy the hype. Like, I feel like, right now, like, are you familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk?
Oh, yeah, Gary V. I just call him Gary V.
Yeah, Gary V. Sorry, I gave you his formal name. He's big into like that idea. He's never said it as cool and succinctly as don't buy the minivan, but he said, like, listen, like, college isn't the thing that you do after 12th grade, unless it is for you. But he's like, do you know how many people waste 4 years and $100,000 on a 4-year degree that they're like, I didn't want to go, but I thought I was supposed to go because my parent, that's what you do. 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, college. And it's like, do you know how many people never wanted to go? Like, my dad didn't go to college, but in New York City, like, there are specialty high schools. And he got sent to an academic high school, but all my dad wanted to do was go to trade school. He wanted to, like, I don't know, be an electrician or a plumber or something. But because it was the thing that it was buy the minivan. You're supposed to, no, your life will be better. And this is back, my dad's in his 70s. This is back in the day. And he's like, do you know, I graduated from high school because I was miserable. And he wound up being a fireman because he's like, there's a hands thing. I like doing the thing, but don't buy the minivan.
Don't buy the minivan. And I'll be honest, my baby's in 12th grade and she is going to college, but she's not going to college because she wants to go to college, because it's not for her. But she wants to keep playing basketball because she feels that her class was the most affected, and she's right, from the pandemic athletically. She missed out the most, and she said, I'm not done. I said, if you're not done, you can keep playing, but that would be in college. And, she wants to go into real estate. And I said, keep playing basketball, learn more about business, and jump into real estate.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So physical therapist, author, don't buy the minivan. And also what do we call you? Legal champion? I feel like legal champion.
Well, yeah, but yes. And that all was because of my oldest daughter. I'll be honest. I used to work about 20 to 24 hours a week and I was with them all the time, but 24, turned into 30, turned into 32, and my kids had it. And I asked my daughter, her birthday is July 23rd. I asked her on the 21st, what do you really want? And she said, I want you to quit your job and sue Helen. And Helen was my boss. She knew that because I'd say, Helen said I have to work, honey. Helen said, and I said, this is what you really want? And she said, yes. So I looked and I had almost 4 weeks of vacation. And I walked in on her birthday at 9:00, my computer and resignation letter in hand. I pressed send. It went out to everyone, including myself. I closed it. I knocked on the door and I handed my resignation letter in. And then I visited a lawyer and we got the ball rolling. And
okay. We need depth. What did you sue your boss for? This is at a PT clinic or?
Oh, this was a hospital system. I sued a hospital system. Okay. Yeah, I sued a hospital system. And they weren't paying us overtime. And it doesn't mean they weren't paying us for our hours. They weren't paying us overtime for the hours over 40.
So what the rule is, well, because it's different by state. There's got to be.
It's not. Everyone thinks that breaks are by state. Number of days in a row you can work are by state. But hourly is a federal wage labor violation. So if you're
once you hit 40?
Once you hit 40, and they can designate 40, they could say our week is Wednesday to Tuesday. Our week is whatever their 7-day rolling is. If you work more than 40 in that, you have to be paid time. Mm-hmm. So I did it, and they told me that their lawyers were better than mine, and I said that's fine. That's fine.
Really?
I'll see you in federal court, and we did it for like 350 of us. We got our overtime, and they owed me $320 for the record.
Wow! So
you heard me. I was only a 0.6er. I was only 24-hour a week. They owed me $320, but we got them for $5.75 million.
Wow.
I got my 320, and everyone says you did that for 320. Well, no, I did it for the principal.
Sure.
But I was then awarded $15,000 as a whistleblower because I want you to do what the taxes are on $5.75 million. What were they not giving the federal government?
Right. Ooh, that's a good. Oh, that's where this whistleblower. I was wondering. I was like, that closes the loop for me, making sense. The reason the government wants you to blow whistles is because they're like, we're going to get a nickel.
They're getting
a lot of nickels.
Yeah, they got a lot of nickels.
Wow. So what was it again?
5.75 million. It was only 4.75 million, but then we got them on obstruction of justice because they were hiding some people's names that weren't working there anymore. And that was an extra $1 million. How'd that
make you feel going from walking in? Because hold on a second. Let's rewind. When this was going on, when you weren't getting, because it's over 40. Is it time and a half? Is that?
Yes.
Federal, so it's okay. Okay, so didn't realize that. All right, so that's federal, across the board, 50 states, 41 hours. I need to be paid X times 50%.
40 hours and 1 minute.
40 hours and 1 minute. Boom. So as soon as I go over 40, it's time and a half.
Yeah.
And what were they telling you? Like, no, it's not? Or how are they like preventing it?
They said it's because we're professionals, that they do not have to pay overtime if you are professional. They were right if you are salary, but not if you are hourly.
Oh, so got it. So salary is like, it's set, right? There's like an agreement. I will work, right?
If you are a professional.
Got it. So if I'm just being blanketed with a salary, that whatever your overtime needs to be calculated in the contract, because that was a contract, right? But if you're hourly, it's a federal rule, 40 hours in 1 minute, time and a half.
Yes.
So they were using, so do you think they were, okay, so now we play this game. Are they dumb or mean? Like, did they not know, or are they trying to steal? Like, what do you think?
They were trying to steal. And I can tell you that when it came down to it, just so everyone knows the big picture, because everyone, will argue back and forth about, what they had to decide in the end was, if this makes sense, they had to decide whether or not they were not paying us our overtime or they were gypping patients on their treatment times. Because when they added up all the treatment times and they added up all of our hours, we were either lying to Medicare that we were treating them longer,
so they weren't
paying us our overtime. So that's how we got them, because they had to pick, they were being negligent to the patients or they were being negligent to the staff. So they picked us and they paid us.
Got it.
So they'd rather give us money than deal with Medicare and say that they were lying to them.
Because that's going to be more money and harder to wash
out. That would be a lot more money and a lot more repercussions.
Wow, because that's just math. It's like, well, that's build Medicare. Math.
And we, it costs a lot of money for one of these things because you had to hire forensics. So we had to pay people a lot of money to go through every person for 3 years that worked there. That's 350 people for 3 years. Every single patient, every single visit.
You could have saved a lot of time and effort if you had ChatGPT back then. You could just copy paste it, and that would have done it. Wow.
Don't tell my lawyer that.
Yeah. Well, no, they don't want to know that now because they want to be able to do billable hours. But okay, so wow. So all right, now I've got the picture.
Yeah.
So they knew they were wrong. We're gonna assume or whatever. I mean, that's the thing. You're either wrong or dumb. I don't know which one you want to admit, but you know. All right. So, gosh. And then please tell me there was some massive party for all of you and 350 people at the end.
No, because remember, I hadn't worked there now in 2 years. Because it took 2 years basically for the whole thing to go through. And keep in mind, I said 350. There were only about 35 people that were willing to sign on to the lawsuit because they were all afraid to lose their job. Now, signing on to the lawsuit just means that you're willing to testify if you're questioned, but you had to fill something out that said you were opting out if you didn't want your money. Not that you were opting in, only opting out. So if you didn't touch anything, you got your check, right?
Oh.
We did have 8 or 9 people opt out. They didn't want any part of this at all. Everybody else got their check, and then they tried to thank me when they got their check, and I wouldn't respond to anyone that would not join my lawsuit because I have no respect for you.
Yeah, if you weren't willing to stand up and
you're not willing to stand up with me and testify, I have nothing to say to you. And
then let's say in theory, because again, I'm not a lawyer, but you dealt with this. If someone had signed on to that, so someone joins your team and then gets fired, would that be grounds for wrongful termination? Am I wrong?
Yeah. So it actually, the repercussions of doing that are worse than wage labor violation. So it's tracked really closely to make sure that no one is. And you know what? I'm going to be honest. It didn't happen for the people that were still working there. It did not happen.
Yeah.
The retaliation. It's an anti-retaliation.
Sure.
It didn't happen.
I mean, I know very little about labor law, but I remember we had a guy at the radio. I mean, my only experience in management or ever firing someone was at a radio station. And I had a guy who was part-time and he was awful. And he would show up late. Like the radio station was off air, did not have a human because he kept showing up late. And I was like, I need to fire this guy. I remember my boss being like, you need to show a pattern of behavior. And I'm like, we were off the air for a minute or an hour. It doesn't matter to me. Like, that's a huge thing in radio. Like, you're never off the air, right? Like, it's a big deal. And he was like, no, man, like, it's hard to like fire someone and not be in the or at least expose where if that person might bring you to court. So I know a very little bit, but what I know, it's a pain in the ass. Even when the person sucks, it's hard to get rid of them.
Yeah. There was, I think if my memory serves me, there was only one person during the time that was fired, and she did try to claim it. And he went through all of her records and he was like, oh, this girl has stuff going way back before this whole thing started. This is not related.
And that's why, like, we know when you get pulled over, it's like anything you say will be used against you in a court of law. It's like the same thing with HR, man. Like, they're keeping records. It's not for you. It's for them. Like, they're writing stuff. Human resources works for the company. Unless you're paying them, they don't work for you. So I want people to remember that.
Right.
All right. So the reason we connected was, number one, this is a cool story. I just kind of like hearing about that because like that's cool to see like, hey, this is wrong, man. And like that person said, hey, good luck. Our lawyers are better than your lawyers. It's like, that's sort of intimidation. It's like, I'm the little guy, but I'm right. And you're essentially saying like, our lawyer's just going to beat your lawyers. Our Goliath's going to beat your David. And you're like, you know what? Okay, check. Let's see this. Let's take a look at this.
Yeah.
So that's a cool story. But I want to talk about something that comes up. We connected over this topic. And again, I know little about it, but you've been involved in this, which is why aren't we a union? And and some people think like physical therapists across the country should be a union.
Uh-huh.
Or, why aren't we unionized by some sort of geographic or setting like, hey, all acute care PTs are all outpatient. So why is this a good idea?
The same company that I took to court, the union was trying to come in and unionize the physical therapist, all the therapists.
The hospital was trying to do that.
The hospital didn't want there to be a union.
Got it, right.
But the union has the right to explain themselves, give us their material, and they have the legal right to do this. And they did come in, if I had to go back to the year, I'm a 90s girl. So I'm going to say it was about 2003 or 4 maybe that they came in and they were trying to unionize us. And the hospital did not want this to happen because they knew it was going to work against them and not for them. And that they would, they have the legal right to post stuff, where we eat and post stuff in our office. And then, management was going around and trying to take this stuff down. And of course, I would find a way to take pictures, of course, and I'd send it and I would report them. And I was like, this is going on. And, it went on and it went on and it went on. It ended up that it was like maybe 30% wanted a union and 70% didn't. But I think that was it was fear mongering from the hospital versus what they actually wanted. Okay. Like, again, don't buy the minivan. Like, you're listening to the one that wants to mess with you. And my suit proves that.
Right.
So I think so you ask the next question and then I'll tell you what I think.
It's a tough one. I don't know which one to ask. Now you've you're like, hey, which one to ask this? Why should a PT, pros and cons of joining the union?
So I think the biggest problem with those that are saying no is they're only thinking about themselves. Okay. So they're thinking about, and I think, remember, I'm a bachelor PT. Like I'm old school. So like, we're just like, I think we're a lot more like laid back and we're a lot more reasonable. I think we're not like I don't want to say we're not as academic because it doesn't sound good, but we're not the doctorates, a lot of whatever, we just do our job. We're from the day where we spent an hour with every patient.
Right.
Okay. So we know what that looks like. We actually know we did it. Okay. So now the people that are coming in, they see these, 30 minutes. I could have 3 people in a clinic at the same time. It's insanity if you would ask someone with a bachelor's degree that, was doing this in the 90s and had 7 to 8 people a day. So we see what it's doing to the patient. So everyone is looking at it from their vantage point when they have to see that it's a two-way street here. Without the union, the patients aren't protected either. It is what it is. I can tell you there's one hospital in Chicago, that's where I am, that is unionized employees, but it is in the worst neighborhood ever. And nobody's going to go there for physical therapy. But if you would, you probably would get a 45-minute to 1 hour one-on-one. They're all unionized. So no one is looking at what's happening to the patient. They're worried about themselves, is how I see it from my generation, because they can't see it any other way because they don't know it any other way.
So all right. So let's go to the other side of the coin. What are reasons not to do this?
I think the control. I mean, there's, because I'm going to say that we have a lot of unions in Chicago. Are you from Chicago?
New York.
Oh, New York. Okay. So you could probably see it. Like, there's a lot of union, like Chicago's very union proud, very union proud. So I think they see the control that the union can have and they feel like they might be locked in. Is the only thing that I can see, and the fear mongering from the employer about what they could do, what they think they can do to them. I don't know, but there's got to be something going in their head, the hamster, that something's going to happen.
Well, I mean, you being afraid of doing something a lot of times that's how brains work. Like me being afraid of something bad happening prevents me sometimes from doing it, even if that bad thing isn't actually going to happen. Does that make
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think that there's enough people brought in to explain the pros. And then there's these made up cons in your head. So you don't even, there's nothing good for you to think to come out of this. So why go there?
Right.
Just stick with what's familiar.
Correct. And I know this is why Nickelback has 50 million albums sold, but everybody hates Nickelback is we do like familiar. We say we like change and different all the time, but we definitely like one foot in familiar while we're doing 1 foot in new and exciting and novel.
Correct. Yep.
So all right. So you've talked about hospital systems or physical therapists at a particular location unionizing. Is there a potential for this to go profession wide? Like, is that structure up? Is that a possibility? This is me being
it's a possibility. And I'm going to go back to September of 2019, pre-pandemic. So obviously no one was talking about unionizing from 2020 to 2022. Right. So that was just kind of put on like a halt. But that's not the excuse that I can see from my perspective, because it was about September, maybe August of 19. I could actually look back, but there was a big group. I mean, tens of thousands on this Facebook group wanting to unionize physical, occupational, speech. I believe it was everybody. And I had a lawyer that was willing to help out. And they were talking about collecting all this money. They had this GoFundMe. And if everyone gave this, they'd have enough money. And the lawyer was charging this. There's all these steps. That's great. But by this time, I had already won. I didn't tell you, but after my first class action settled, 2 days later, I filed against the company I went to work for. So I won too. But that's another story. So I'm going to tell you that I won my lawyer millions of dollars, and
he's following you around going, let's see where this lady goes.
Yes. So I quit after that. I started my own thing, but that was his advice, because he said, you can't take it anymore. I agree. So by the way, he can't pay me. That's illegal. He can't pay me from the money that he won from my case. Okay? He can't pay me. So he can do me legal favors. He can give me legal advice. He could do whatever. Sure. So I had it on the line that I could have I could get a little bit of legal advice and I put it out to them that I had this lawyer that could help us out. And I was immediately cut off. They didn't want my help. They said they were going to handle it themselves. They didn't get enough money, and they shut the whole thing down. By then, I had unjoined the group and completely just said, go scratch. And I had already put in all of my applications for opening up my own clinic.
And that's what you're doing now? Your own thing?
And that's what I'm doing now.
Now, wouldn't it be crazy if you could sue yourself?
No. Yeah, sometimes I say to myself, too bad I'm not getting overtime. Right?
Yeah, that's the funny part is, like, there's a big push, and there's people getting really great results with coming out of PT school and just being their own person, right? Being their own organization. And the funny thing is, when you do that, you're like, well, I'm just going to be my own boss. I'll take off whenever I want. And then you realize you work like 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Yes,
68 hours a week.
I do it to myself. I'm not going to lie. Like, I could just cut myself off, but I don't.
Sure. We all could. Look, I mean, look what I do. I do communication stuff, so I can do it from anywhere. The problem with that is, or not problem, but like one of the things you should understand, and this is going into business for yourself anywhere, is like you will be thinking about these things almost all the time. It's very difficult to cut your brain off. Yeah. And when you do what I do in terms of working from home, I'm always at the office, unless I'm not, right? Yeah. Which is like, so I'm walking by, and I record this at my kitchen island 90% of the time. I don't have a big fancy studio yet. Maybe I'll build one. But you're sort of always on, or sort of always thinking about that thing. Right.
My joke is I have my kitchen office, and I have my family room office. I have my bedroom office, and I actually have my office. Yeah. So that's like my big joke.
Do you go in the office?
Oh, no, that's just where like this stuff is. Yeah, like I don't do any work in there. All my stuff is just in there.
Right. Yeah. I do the same thing. Yeah. I am in the process of building and renovating a room downstairs into a gym / studio, content studio. Yeah. But of course I built a kitchen in my house. Was the first thing I renovated. And I'm like, well, it's got a lot of light and it's not in a basement. So I want to hang out here all day.
Yeah. It looks great.
That's just the way it goes. Let's look to the future. I won't hold you to it, because it's like being a weather person. You could be completely wrong, but you're still getting credit for taking a shot at it. You think this will ever happen nation, like large scale, enough to make a difference? You think PTs or allied health professionals will unionize?
Not in my lifetime, and I think it's because things in healthcare are getting worse. So every graduating class sees worse and worse and worse, and they will never be able to go back and see how it was and how it could be.
But
And
wouldn't unionizing get there or help get there? Wouldn't that be a better?
yeah,
And
but
again,
I don't think they can even see far enough to know that that would solve that. I mean, it's not solving the problem; it's just making it better. I don't think they have they can even see it to know it. I mean, it's like a payphone booth. I'd have to explain it to my kids, and they still wouldn't get it. Like it's something that's, yeah.
How do you explain to? There was a joke, right? It's like one fish swims by the other, and he goes, "Awful wet out here, isn't it?" And the other fish goes, "What's wet mean?" Because it's like, how would you know any
You're
different?
always in it.
Dry, right?
Exactly. No, I get it.
Was that from Finding Nemo, or was that just like a 6-year-old joke or something? I might have made that up. I can't remember.
I don't remember. I've seen Nemo enough, but I don't remember.
All right. Anything else about your experiences, like sort of with this part of thing, which never gets talked about really, I feel like, or very little. It kind of gets like hushed.
No, yeah, I'm gonna say that I don't think that there was a fair shot. I almost feel like, in hindsight, this is in hindsight, I almost feel like that. And this, I don't. What do people call that? Conspiracy. Like, I almost feel like that group was put together as a sham.
Ooh, like a false flag.
Yeah, because there is no way. Here is why. I have a family member that's in a union, mechanics. There's no way that if somebody comes forward with a free lawyer while you're trying to do a GoFundMe and you haven't raised enough money, that you'd rather just shut the whole thing down. So I almost feel like it was this platform to hear it all. Somebody wanted to hear it all, and then they just shut it down.
Huh. Interesting.
I could be completely wrong. At this point, I can't care anymore. I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. All right. Can we have a segment on the show called 3 Questions? Are you ready to do 3 questions?
Yeah, and I should have practiced this 3 questions a little bit.
You can't. You don't even know the questions, so don't practice.
On the hot seat with 3 questions on the PT Pintcast.
All right, 3 questions on the show is brought to you by our friends at ATI. One of the leaders in clinical research, with more than 900 of their clinics placing the 100th percentile in CMS's merit-based incentive program for the 2nd consecutive year. Go to atipt.com if you want to join their team. All right, first question. We'll go with a fun fact question. As a synchronized swimmer with the Olympic trials in 1988, is that true? That's cool.
That is. And you know what? I'm going to make sure Greg Todd hears this. It was, do you know who Greg Todd is?
Yeah, I know Greg. Yeah.
Okay. So it was a big joke. He was doing this thing and I was listening on it, and he said something like, that would be like me trying to talk to a bunch of synchronized swimmer or teach synchronized swimming.
Right.
He said nobody knows synchronized swimming, and then I had to pipe in there, and he was like, "Hold up!" And he stopped the whole thing, and I was like, "I swam in the '88 Olympic trials," but he was like, "Come on now!" So that was like our big joke.
So give me like a little bit of the backstory, and then how do you think, what'd you take from synchronized swimming into leadership, teamwork, your professional life?
You're working with a big group of girls that all have to be doing the same thing, the teamwork involved, and that's kind of like. I was probably more of like the captain. I don't think we had an official captain back in the day, but you have to be able to lead, and you have to be able to have everyone on the same page, literally, in synchronized swimming. You all have to be doing the same thing at the same time. You got to do what you got to do in order for it to look right.
I am a swimmer, and when I was in PT school, the locals high school pool, their high school pools are nuts in like the DC area. But one of the other pools off to the side, because I'd never been around synchronized swimming, and watching just practice I would go underwater because I would just like sit there and watch because it was mind blowing. Above the surface was cool. Below the surface, I would just
everyone's doing this at the same time.
Is wild underneath, which is kind of cool.
Now I'm a swimmer. I was a swimmer too. So all you have to know is that I was the 200 butterflyer. Now you know how crazy I am.
Yeah, I couldn't. Right? My spine did not do the undulation. My coach would be like, "Can't you just do this?" I'm like, "Coach, I don't think my body does that." So that's why I swim breaststroke and freestyle. I'm a breaststroke.
Oh no, I was all butterfly.
All right. Share a memorable moment from that synchronized swimming days that taught you a valuable life lesson. There's got to be some fun moment. I mean, whenever you do something that intensely.
God, there were so many just because my team was so fun.
Was there a
It was
name of the team? Was it like some like kitschy fun name like the
we were the Aqua Sprites. It wasn't that great. There were
Okay.
some other teams that were like the Aqua Nuts. We like that. The Aqua Maids. They were better.
Yeah.
Those are California teams. What was the most memorable moment? Probably the fact that I bought tickets to the Olympic trials and then I realized I was in them.
Yeah.
Like that was that. Like I was so young though. Whatever, you know what I mean? Like, but it was just that's probably the most memorable. Is here I had tickets and I had a deck pass. You know what I mean? But that was so many years ago.
That's cool.
Yep.
All right, create a slogan for the unionization movement in healthcare. If you had to do that, what would it be? If you were like, I'm going to create the phrase that people are going to rally around, what would it be?
I would say that it would have to be something around ensuring that our profession remains resilient, equitable, and patient-centered because it's becoming too much about the company and not enough about the employee or the patient.
I like that because if you do an acronym, it's REP.
Oh, you're right,
Resilient,
REP. Yeah,
equitable.
resilient, equitable, and patient-centered.
Now
Yeah.
it's like reps. And what do we know about PT and rehabilitation? It's all about getting the reps in.
Yes.
I
The
don't know.
reps. There you go.
Maybe you could be our first head of our union. I mean, I'm just saying, like,
I'm not against it.
All right, last thing we do on the show is the parting shot.
This is the parting shot.
Parting shot brought to you by our friends from the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy. Find them online at orthopt.org. They're industry-leading current concepts of orthopedic physical therapy. It's a roadmap. Wherever you want to go in your career in orthopedics, they'll take you from where you are to maybe sitting for that OCS exam or just making sure you can distill the latest current evidence. Again, Current Concepts, 5th edition, orthopt.org. All right, last chance for a mic drop moment, soapbox statement. What do you got for us?
Well, I don't think it's going to be a mic drop moment, but I think we have to remember that our strength of our profession doesn't just lie in our clinical expertise, but also in our unity. And I think that's literally the biggest downfall of why there hasn't been, everything leads back to everyone is out there for themselves and they can't think past that. And whether or not we do it, I think there should continue to be open dialogue about it and the pros and the cons of it. And you know what? It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. So that's fine.
Appreciate you taking the time to tell us your stories and little insights. And, next time when this comes up online, I'll feel like I know a little bit more and I'll be a little more insightful.
Thank you.
All right. They said the best conversations happen at happy hour. Thanks for coming to ours.